Welcome. I'm so glad everybody somehow miraculously found a spot to sit or stand. We put the AC to a level that to me feels freezing cold, so I hope we'll be comfortable in here, temperature-wise. I'm so pleased to have all of you here for the opening of SWOON, the Canyon. It's an exhibition that I think we've all anticipated with great excitement, and I can only tell you it looks spectacular, and it's been an amazing pleasure to work here during the last 6 weeks with Cali Dance Caledonia, aka SWOON's team and our crew, and I really want to thank everybody who's been involved in making this exhibition possible. Everybody who cut paper, pasted, drew, painted. I mean, it's taken a village, and it shows. So thank you. So as an institution for contemporary art, we believe that art and the creative process are for all people. And I just wanted to share with you before we get started that we just finished our fiscal year, so we operate a little bit differently than a calendar year. We ended our fiscal year August 31st, and 150,000 people walked through our doors, came to our programs. Came to our performing arts series, and it's just amazing how many people decide that contemporary art should be part of their life. It's really exciting to me. So we are open to all, free for all, and welcoming to all. And all of us here, the entire staff and the board and everybody associated with the institution, we all work tirelessly every day on our institutional mission of open minds. A world full of people who are open-minded, more broadly thinking, and more deeply empathetic would be a better world, and contemporary art can get us there. So I am more than thrilled to open the first all-encompassing, in-depth survey exhibition of SWOON. It's been in the works for quite some time. We had her here maybe 2 years ago, and as she shared earlier with us, she came here and she thought maybe we would ask her to do like a small project, a small sculpture somewhere, but we said, here are 10,000 square feet. We want you to go all out, and that indeed she has. So SWOON, as you might know, works very, very collaboratively. There are lots of people who are engaged in her creative process in all kinds of parts of the world. And what I've observed here, even during the past 3 weeks, is her amazing ability to create a space for others to pour their passion and their creativity into what she does. So she's an amazing collaborator that way. And we even have some people here today from New Orleans and from other places that Kali has touched through her work and in her life. And everybody I meet had just this very open, exhilarating experience of being part of her vision and part of her relationship to the world. So thank you all for being here. I'm super excited that you found your way to Cincinnati on the Ohio River. So when you go upstairs, you'll understand really quickly how massive this undertaking has been of installing the first ever survey exhibition of SWOON's work that really delves very deeply into her practice from her early years to now. It's a very personal show. And of course, I want to thank the incredible sponsors that have made this exhibition possible. The Formica Corporation, especially Amy Gath, the US Bank Private Wealth Management Group with John Benavides, Alice Weston, the Harvey Hubble Trust, 1919 Investment Council, LPK, Alex and Jason McCaw, Rosemary and Mark Schlachter, Dionisa Savas and Martin Wills, and our opening reception sponsor is Dewey's Pizza. So they're going to be amazing, delicious pizza bites later on upstairs in our Kaplan Hall lobby. And our ArtsWave corporate partner is GE. So I want to introduce the curator of this exhibition, Stephen Maticio, to say a few words, and then we're going to hand it over to Caledonia Curry, aka SWOON. Stephen, where are you? Oh, I have to say, he found this most amazing jacket for this opening tonight. It's just... It should be mine. It should come in small with a little waistline.
My jacket and I thank you, Rafaela. Well, I wanted to just give a few thanks of myself before I introduce Callie. First of all, we had to put up a slide here because we didn't want to miss a single name, and we wanted to have all of these names up here in lights. You're going to see one name upstairs on the 4th and 5th floor, but it really has taken a village, and it's been such a communal effort. So please, everyone, give a warm round of applause for every single person on this list. They've been so crucial. Our crew here, Callie's crew that came in from New York, all of our volunteers have worked so ardently and tirelessly to make this all possible. And so we're so grateful for their help and their support and for all that they've done to make this all possible. I can give a very formal introduction to Callie. She's got a few biographical notes that I should note. She grew up in Daytona Beach, Florida. She moved to Brooklyn and studied at the Pratt Institute and has shown her work at a number of important museums, including the Brooklyn Museum, the Detroit Institute of the Arts, the Skissernos Museum, and LA MoCA. But that just doesn't begin to expand upon what she truly is and what she can do. At the CAC, we've had this history of supporting street artists, and we've shown the group show Beautiful Losers, we've shown a major Shepard Fairey show, we've done JR, but we wanted to break out of the boys' club of street art to sort of prepare. And so really, Callie has become the linchpin for, right now, I just want to highlight, this is not going to be the exception. We want this to be the increasing norm at the CAC, where all of our floors have women artists right now. And then starting October 6th, we'll be showing a number of artifacts and posters and picket signs from the Women's March across the country from Sarah Vance's collection. And that will be publicly open October 11th. And so we're just really excited about this moment right now. And then really, Callie has become, I think, in so many ways, the linchpin to bring it all together. And we're so pleased to introduce her tonight. On a very personal note, she came here about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and we started this process from the site visit. And I started to do all this research into her work, and you see all of these epic, ambitious projects from around the world, this figure that becomes larger than life. And then you meet her, and she's so down to earth, and she's so accessible. And I see her going up and shaking hands and saying, "Hi, I'm Callie," to everyone and anyone that she meets. And you become completely inspired by her. The way that she curates and gathers a community around her, this is how these projects become possible. And we're so grateful that the CAC could accompany her on this little part of this much longer journey. So please welcome Caledonia Curry.
Hi, oh my God, amazing, yay, hi, thanks everyone for coming. So I just want to say a couple things, and the first is that I've never given a talk in the immediate aftermath of a 6-week long installation. So I'm totally bonkers. I'm so tired and spacey, and I haven't had a ton of time to prepare. So you're just going to get a very genuine experience of a hardworking artist who's a little not ready. So there's that. And then also, I just want to appreciate Cincinnati for a moment. We've just had some amazing experiences here. Yeah. Woo, Cincinnati! the level of, I just want to tell this one story. So one member of our crew, we needed fishing line, and so she went into a hardware store and said, "Do you guys sell fishing line?" And the guy says, "No, but I have some." So he brings out his fishing pole from the back, and then he unspools his own fishing line off of his fishing pole, and he gives it to us. And I was like, telling people the story, like, "Can you believe?" And then everyone was like, "Oh yeah, that's just Cincinnati. That's what happens here." I was like, this place is so cool. And the other thing that I want to say is that, I have done work in a ton of museums, and like hands down to the power of 10, this is the most supportive, most awesome, fun, organized, like, this is a world class, like, incredible. So, and then also before I get started, this, like, there's a whole group of people here in the front who have been working with me every day, 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, 6 weeks. And so just like give yourselves a round of applause right now. You guys are amazing. And also I have 2 collaborative projects that, actually 3 collaborative projects that there are folks here. So can I say, do you mind if okay, so this is KT Tierney and Katie Jones, who work in Braddock, Pennsylvania. Yeah. And if anybody wants to, and then also we have Delaney Martin and Taylor Shepard, who are here from New Orleans. Woo! And these guys are both the heads of beautiful projects that I'm lucky to be a part of. And also KT we worked together on the project in Haiti. So there's a lot of really deep roots of collaboration here. So there are a lot of people, if you guys are curious about the projects, if there might, I'm not sure that I will, I'm not sure that this slide presentation might not have everybody represented, because like I said, I didn't have any time. So as I think that New Orleans, the project is not well represented in this talk, so we will just have to make sure that you spend some time upstairs in that section. So basically this show is the first time that I've tried to encapsulate the entire process of my working life from the day that I became a person who thought of myself as an artist. I'm not sure how to explain it. So when you start out as an artist, the sort of first thing that you do is you're like, oh, this is my Monet, this is my Van Gogh, I'm copying this, I'm copying that. And that's how you learn. And there was a moment in my late teens, early 20s when all of a sudden it was like the lights went out and I didn't know where I was going, but I felt pulled. It was like I was on this and I was doing all these things that seemed a little strange to me at the time. Because I came from a painting background. And that was the moment when I started following a sort of a path that felt confusing for me. That was the moment I felt that I was born as an artist. And so I started this exhibition that year, which was 1999. And what was going on for me that year was I had fallen totally in love with New York City. And I deeply wanted to make something that melded with the collage that was happening out on the streets, and I also wanted to make something which was tangibly part of my life. Do I have an echo on this mic? No, okay. So I just loved the city, and I wanted to make something that was tangibly part of my life, and I was like, if art is to live, it's gonna have to like come into contact and be changed by the world that we live in. If art is not gonna just kind of die away and become some distant, irrelevant thing that people think of as too stuffy or too whatever, like we're gonna have to keep reinventing it. And so for me at that part of my life, the part that spoke to me was this pull to be working outside and to be working with this collage. And so a lot of these figures you'll see in the exhibition in a little bit cleaner form, but this is one of the first pieces that I ever put out on the street. And I loved just the sort of natural chaos of the streets of New York City. And I loved the way that, pieces, when you put them outside, they age and they tatter and they wear away and people draw over them. And they just have a kind of a life cycle, which was super interesting to me. And then also, another thing that, I didn't realize this wasn't full screen. Don't be so polite, you guys. Okay. As I said, I'm just going to give myself a free pass to just ramble, and this is the raw version over here. So yeah, so see this process of this kind of like crackling away, and the paper is decaying and changing, and you make a piece and it disappears, and all of those things were super interesting to me, as well as just making something that was part of my life, part of my daily life. And one of the things that started to happen pretty immediately is that people would just start to tell me stories about like seeing a piece and how it mattered to them, how it, connected with something in them, how it like signified a specific time in their life, how it helped them make a decision, how it kept them company. And I really felt like it was those kinds of stories that kept me going, that kept me making stuff outside, because I know that like even an amazing place like the CSC, where they have free admission and they're really working hard to make museums be public spaces and be something that's of service to its community, there's still a kind of a barrier where some people just don't either know that they're interested in art, but more likely don't feel necessarily like invited into some spaces, or feel that there's like a permission. I remember that feeling myself when I first moved to New York, and I would walk into galleries and I was just like, ugh, like these people don't really like me, and so I just feels like I don't want this to be the only way that my art is experienced, is in an environment that I myself feel uncomfortable in. And so I just started creating these things outside, and it's been such a journey. And when I first started, I thought, that kind of initial moment of feeling like I was off map and the lights kind of went out and I was sort of exploring a path. That was a moment where I said to myself, okay, I'm going to make a series of posters, and then they're going to, it's going to be for like a month, and then I'm going to quit. And then, there were moments, this is a moment when a journalist who was working in Iraq said, like, I really want to bring a piece of yours to Iraq. And a friend of mine had given me a camera that a soldier's mother had given to him. And he said, I don't know what to do with this material. Like, can you please make a drawing from this? And so I had made this drawing, and then this journalist said, can I please bring something? And so there were all of these ways that that working outside and that working in the context of cities was just like giving me the opportunity to make things that, I don't know, that just interacted with the world very deeply. And so that project, which started as something that was going to be a month long, has been going for 20 years and has been the backbone of the whole rest of my process. Oh, this is the fence of the Music Box in New Orleans. And I've done a lot of, there's a lot of different processes represented, from wood block to linoleum block to paper cutting. There are many different narratives in the stories. There's a whole section of the show, which is just the narrative room, and this piece is one of them, so I won't go into it, but you can see the process. But the longer I worked, the more I, as you look deeply into the faces of people, as you consider the lives of people, there's just, you can go infinitely deep into the human psyche, and you can go infinitely deep into the human life. And so I found that I wanted the portraits that I was making to deepen. And so, you'll see, even like looking at the face of this person from the first paper cut that I showed, which was of my grandfather, that I'm just kind of looking more closely and trying to like capture something a little more in depth, like as I work. And also, finding that there are stories that I wanted to share. This is a portrait that I made of my mom as she was passing away. And this was a moment when, my mom was sick with cancer. And as everyone knows who's lost someone dear to them, it's kind of all you can do to hold on to the ground for a little while there. And so making this piece was like an anchor into the world for me. And so there's so many different ways that the making art has functioned in my life. And each of those kind of shows up in these portraits. This is a portrait that you'll also see in the narrative room. And so the narrative room kind of goes into a little bit of depth about, connections that I was making with people, or just things that were happening in their lives, or a connection, with a larger situation. This is just a fun picture from an amazing town called Yogyakarta, Indonesia, which is incredibly creative, and people are really excited about art on the street, and I had a lot of fun there. So there's a lot you can tell about cities also. Yogyakarta was one of my favorite places that I've ever pasted, because by decree of the king, graffiti is legal. Except for one guy, he got in trouble and he got a fine that was 10 cents. because like but otherwise somehow he had a bad day. But just this incredibly like vibrant, like when you can make art outside, when public spaces are accessible to people to make things that they can directly communicate them with, it just has this way of showing. It's like a kind of a litmus test for the city of like how open, how expressive, how tolerant, how much do we want to hear and share each other's voices. And so, when I first started working outside on the street, there was also, and continues to be, a huge move to privatize our public spaces. And so for me, working outside is always a gesture of kind of opening up the walls of the city and saying like, hey, there's a way that this can be really participatory. There's a way that this can be a sounding board for people's, everything from creative expression to political, there's so much that needs expressing, and that it needs a direct form of expression that can happen from any person at any time with very little means. Here's a close-up of one of the linoleum blocks. In this show, I also included as much process stuff as I could, so you'll see in the show that there are quite a few blocks that are on the wall. There's wood blocks, there's linoleum blocks. I put a little section with my tools, and there's also one project called The Secret that's hidden. I'm not going to say where it is, so people just have to find it. It's a secret, I guess. Just living up to its name. And then, after working on the street for a while, I found that I was having these kind of complex dreams of cities, and complex spaces were kind of showing up in my mind, and that I wanted a space to make what I was seeing. And working outside on the street is completely amazing, but everything gets reined away, and everything, there's a kind of a speed, and it has a lot of constraints. And so soon people started asking me to do projects in galleries, and at first I was like I made myself in this way that was kind of about being outside of these institutional spaces. Like, what does this feel like to me to be asked to be inside? And I did a few different projects kind of struggling with that. And then finally I said, you know what, I actually really, there's a part of me that needs to be born, that needs like time, space, resources, and like a room that doesn't rain inside. So I started accepting installations, and this was my first major installation, which happened in 2005. And then from there, I just continued to kind of site-specifically address different spaces. This was a show I did in Moscow, and the gallery was way too fussy. They didn't want me to paint on things. But then we discovered that there was a 12th century salt cellar in the basement that had been turned into an auto mechanic shop and then abandoned. And I was like, oh, let me go down there. So I worked in that space. So each time I take a show, this one there was like a construction wall up, and they were going to take it down, and I said, no, keep it. I want to use it. And we kind of tilted it back and worked from there. And so this approach of really like seeing a space and thinking about what happens in that space and addressing the building as like a moment to respond. I think in a way that kind of started with pasting out on the street, because you're looking at walls, you're looking at spaces, you're considering how the work functions, intrinsically connected to this environment. And so working in the gallery, that thought process was very much alive. And so that happened with this installation very much that, at first when I came into this building, I was like, oh, okay, beautiful, this like huge kind of modern space. It was a little unfamiliar for me. I'm used to kind of older buildings and looking at different kinds of architectural details. But the longer I worked in this space, the more I fell in love with it. It was really incredible to work in. Now, this is a show that I did in Paris with a woman named Adeline, who's here in the front. Hi. This is a big moment for me, so there's a lot of family and friends who are here. This piece, actually, Miranda Lash was here today, but is she How I Know You? Is from Miranda? So this is a piece that I created in New Orleans, and there's a version of it that's here. And I think in some ways this maybe is how I'm connected with the CAC. And this is also at Gallery LJ with Adeline. I'm not even really going to go into a lot of the ideas behind these installations, but each installation, some of them I'm really responding visually. Sometimes I'm taking kind of a core concept and building off of that. This is an installation that was connected to a raft project. And so these two embracing figures were, and all the ropes coming out were kind of intended to be like the safe haven that the raft's connected to. So they docked outside and tied into these ropes. And and then this is the last major installation that I did at the Brooklyn Museum. And and it's called Submerged Motherland'S. And I think here I was starting to think a little bit more in depth and a little bit more conceptually about, or just conceptually rich about each installation. And so this one, I worked in the rotunda of this building. It was about 70 feet tall. And when I had been designing the rafts originally, I had been thinking a lot about climate change. And at the time, I remember it was 2008, and I would sort of talk to journalists or people about it, and everyone would kind of just like, yeah, whatever. Nobody wanted to spoil the party. It was like the economic boom. People didn't want to print stories like that. It was kind of like no one was paying attention, even though we all knew it was happening, And so then when the Brooklyn Museum asked me to do the show, Sandy had happened, and New York had had a physical experience of the flood, which the rafts and that show had been so much about thinking about flooding and about the vulnerability of coastal cities and just this moment. And so I decided to bring the rafts back for that show because it was like we kind of had a wake up about what it really means to be in this vulnerable place. And so the core of this installation was this tree, and again, kind of thinking of, this sort of safe haven, this pillar, this docking, and like our connection to life and to nature. And and also at this moment, I start thinking a lot about trauma because my mom was passing away, and I was studying and learning, just reflecting on my own life. And I know that Cincinnati is actually kind of one of the centers right now of the opiate crisis in the United States. And so my family was heroin addicted when I was born, so I grew up in a family of addicts. And it's an incredibly difficult thing, and it's something I've really been learning to unpack in the last few years. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but there's some work in this show that I've also created that's very much related to that. But for now, I'll change tack. How long have I been talking? I've got how many more? Oh, 10 more minutes. Oh, I better go fast. Okay. So we made some rafts. Like you do. So randomly, with working on installations and with working out on the street, I started to learn that when you get together with your friends, you can do really big stuff together. And I had this like long-standing dream of building my own raft and going down some waterway and traveling. And so after talking about this for years, I always give this like advice to people creatively: just keep saying your idea, just keep saying it and keep saying it and keep saying it. It starts to stick after a while. You start to, you want to hold yourself accountable. Other friends here, and they say, oh, that person builds a boat, or oh, I know it. So the guy in the front here, his name is Papa Neutrino. He's got the blue shirt on. He built a junk raft and took it across the Atlantic Ocean. Like amazingly, it was basically a miracle that they survived. But he taught us, through talking to friends and connecting with people, he taught us how to build these rafts, and we started off on this whole like incredible part of my life where each summer for 4 years, a group of friends and I lived on rafts on the Mississippi River, then on the Hudson River, and finally in Venice. And it was so fun and so difficult and so everything, so free, so beautiful, so much contact and struggle with nature, so much kind of, people would just be like, what are you? What is this? What's happening? One of my favorite ones when we were going down the Mississippi is people would go, do your moms know you're doing this? I think you guys sent some care packages while we were on the Mississippi. So here we are in Venice, and one thing is that although these projects look totally crazy, they loved us. I don't know if you can see on this slide, but we actually are a registered vessel. So there was a lot that went into making this ridiculous thing actually legal. And of course, to the surprise of many people, especially people in Europe who were like, we have boating laws, what are you doing? But in the United States, our boating laws are quite skeletal. It's that you have to float, have a motor, have a life jacket, and have like a sign that says you won't throw your waste into the water, and a motor. And at that point, you're done. Like you just say, I have a wooden boat, and that's it, and you register, and you don't have to explain anything else. So. But so we took these rafts. One of these rafts was part of the ballet. I worked with Jennifer Archibald and Victoria Rogers in the Cincinnati Ballet, and we created a piece that was also thinking about climate change. And then the raft stayed here, and then we built a raft theater out of the raft itself. So you'll see, like on the upstairs, there's a a wooden wall, and then there's all these kind of pieces, and it's like a dark room. And so that's the rafts themselves that have been on this journey. We took them apart and built them into rafts. And then another project that I have been a part of since the earthquake, with also with KT Tierney, who is here, is a project in Haiti. So I had been working on these raft projects for a long time, and the thing like with a project like this is that you're defying like all possibility. You know, everyone's saying you can't do that, it's not going to work, it's too dangerous, you're going to die, no one will let you do it, no. And so in doing all of that, I was just learning the ways to just like summon your strength and your problem solving skills and get together your friends and just kind of make things happen in a level that I sort of was like, I think that this is a real skill set, and I think that this could be useful. And so as I was kind of just starting to think about that, the earthquake struck in Haiti. And, you know, I'm from Florida. Haiti is 500 miles off the coast. It was like this really awful thing just happened to your neighbors. And it was right at a moment when a lot of friends of mine and I were feeling like we were like maybe in a position to be helpful. And so we reached out and got together a little group of friends, and we made a connection with a small community in Haiti, because we were a small group ourselves, and we taught ourselves this style of architecture, which is based on using the natural resources that are available, which is largely earth. And there is an Iranian-born architect. Here we are having a meeting with the Mango Growers Association, who is our local partner in this village that we worked in outside of Léogâne, which was the epicenter of the quake. And this style of architecture is called Super Adobe, and the result is domes, which are incredibly resilient. They're fire, flood, tornado resistant. They're, you know, the dome, your head is in a dome for a reason, because it's like the strongest structure. And so we taught ourselves this style because this architect had made it publicly available for people who were working in a humanitarian capacity. And it's something that you can learn, that you can teach, and that you can make incredibly resilient structures with. You know, and along the way we learned a lot of that it's difficult. You know, there's a lot of things that are hard about it. It takes a lot of the plaster, it takes a lot of maintenance. You know, even though it's made with largely earth, there's still quite a lot of expenses, because, you know, one of the reasons that the earthquake struck so hard in Haiti is actually about economic conditions. It's about how, you know, I won't even go into like what has created this moment, but I will just say that a bag of cement costs the same as a day's wage. You know, living on an island, and then all that, like, the world has made life very difficult for Haiti in a lot of ways if you look into the history of Haiti. And so we found that these structures, even though they have very little cement content, they're still actually quite expensive to build. And being artists, we were also like, you know, how is beauty, how is decoration, how is like soulfulness and joy like part of this process? And so you see that these buildings also contain a lot of decorative elements. But anyway, so we sort of worked on adapting the building style, and KT, who is here, had a lot of had a lot of thinking about how to like try to make sure that you're being really responsive. Like if you develop a relationship with a place and you have said like, okay, we want to be a part of helping you recover from this, how do you be a good listener? And so there's a Katie who works also in Braddock, has sort of constantly like kept me thinking and just thinking about how to be a good listener and how to really be responsive when you're working in communities. And so this is, I'm just going to kind of like go through quickly because we're nearing the end here, but just to say that the last house that we started an after school program to just sort of like, you know, continue connecting with folks in this village, because it's what I didn't anticipate is that once you connect with a group of people, it's a relationship, you know, and I had never really worked in this way before. And so I just thought, okay, we're going to go and build a thing and we'll be done. And then all of a sudden you're building together with this group of people, and it's, you know, you become kind of like a family in some senses. And so we felt that we wanted to continue the project, and so we just returned this last spring and built a house with bamboo, and that's going to be the final house that I'm involved in building because I need a break. And I'm just going to like blaze. So a long time ago, I got invited to work on this church, which was very abandoned and falling apart. And again, you know, some people were saying like, hey, you and your friends, you like work on stuff. This thing is going to get demolished. Can you work with this building? And so I have been loosely involved with, I haven't been living in this town, but I've been involved in this project in Braddock for a number of years. And there are a couple of collectives who work there. One is called Transformasium, the other is Braddock Tiles, and I'm kind of like this free agent that's just kind of like trying to like slowly and steadily put my problem-solving skills to the question of this church. And there's more about the project upstairs. KT wrote a lot about their specific work, so I'm just going to go quickly through these slides, and there's Harmony. I need to give a little shout out while I'm here. So Terrence and Harmony taught us, they're beautiful, they're amazing, they're really brilliant artists, and they taught us how to silkscreen tiles, and that was a real game changer for us for raising money to help Braddock Tiles as a company get started. And so I just want to thank these guys for their generosity. And it's kind of cool, like, just to think about, like, the Cincinnati connections. The other thing is that I always wear this tool belt fanny pack thing. And the person who makes it is my friend Carrie, and she... I met her here in Cincinnati when I was here for the Beautiful Losers show in 2003. So let me see. Just blaze, blaze, blaze. I think I'm just going to stop there, and we'll open it up for questions. There's a lot to say, but it's time, right, Stephen? Yeah. 2 minutes. All right. What should I say in these 2 minutes? Let's see. Well, there was something I wanted to say. I forgot. Are you Duncan Pomboidal? You are. I have so many friends here. Yay. Okay. Basically, just to like have another moment to just like give gratitude to these folks. Like, as everyone has said, like, this literally takes a village. You know, there are projects that I'm a part of collaboratively, like the Music Box and like the Braddock Tiles, where I'm a small part of this larger thing. And then there are projects like this where I really have like, okay, this is this vision and we're going to work in this way. But even still, like, no person could do what's out there, like, with their own 2 hands alone. And so there is a group of folks that I've been working with who each have like different parts of this process in their mind, and who helped me, you know, from start to finish say, like, okay, this is how you want to make, this is what you want to make it. Christine is here, who's been working with me for 10 years now and knows every single part of my process back. How many? 14. Oh my God, time flies. I think we're officially married after 15, so. So just to say that, like, there's the debt of gratitude that I owe to these folks, and also we've had so much fun, so thank you. That it's huge, that like there's no, this moment is made by a lot of people, and so just thank you very, very, very much. I should stay standing. All right, should we do questions? Who has a question? You in the back.
With so many things that probably deserve your attention, how do you prioritize between things that you're doing?
Yeah. So I'm about to take a big break in 2018. I've been just kind of going great guns and rather naively jumping into like really deep, intensive projects and communities when I didn't really even know what that meant. I didn't understand. There's so many things about it that I didn't understand. And so next year I'm gonna just like take some time to think, you know. And this show has been interesting because it's really shown me my successes and my failures, you know. And there's definitely a lot of things where I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that decision, or like I really wasn't very conscious when I was doing this work. And you know, there's a lot of reflection and also I'm just tired. And you know, and the thing is, like, the work that we did in Haiti, for example, I had a moment when the earthquake happened in Japan, and someone stood up in a talk and said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm really sorry to tell you this. I'm not going to do anything. I said, I've made a decision to work with this community, and I have to stick by this project. And that means that as a finite person, I can't just be everywhere at all times. And so there's a sort of just like a needing to follow your instinct and follow your gut. And my kind of creative muse has always been pretty darn irrational. And so it's just like I really get this feeling like I'm getting pulled by my hair. like faster than I want to go. and so it's like it's I just kind of try to like go along for the ride. I don't know if that answered your question at all. My answers will be especially rambling tonight. Anyone else have any questions? Right there.
Hold on.
Oh, yes. You're amazing. That is real work.
I'm kind of hoarse because I've been talking. I teach 800 fourth graders a week, and when I introduce artists to them, I try to find out about what the artists were like when they were children. And my students have really connected. You know, when I found out Franz Marc, when he was baptized, his dad got a good look at him and he fainted because he was so ugly. And see, that kind of stuff really connects with my fourth graders. So I was hoping tonight to find some information that what were you like when you were 9 years old and you were creative and maybe spunky?
Yeah. Oh, that was such a special time for me. So I don't know how to say. Oh, actually, I need to wait. I can't answer that.
I'm sorry.
I'm a little close to the surface.
Why don't we ask another question and maybe revisit?
That sounds good.
Another
I've
question?
been crying pretty much every day during this installation. I usually have a good cry in the morning, and I didn't have my cry yet, so so I brought it here to you.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next question. Thank you.
Yes, I'm pregnant with this project.
It's getting really raw here, everybody. I wanted to ask you a question. One time you said to me this, I guess I would call it an insight, about how you had this sort of process where you would do things alone, you know, and sort of make work singularly. I'm taking it. And then you would, you know, ostensibly be in your studio alone, making your work, and then you would kind of, you know, be wanting to like then re-enter this more potentially chaotic, socialized, collaborative moment, and then that would be really fun, and you would do that, and it would be like intense, and then you would then try to go back into this like solo rest kind of thing, and that's just how I remember you describing it. But so wondering if you could talk about that a little bit more, just in that like wavelength dynamic lifestyle mode.
Thanks for asking that.
Yeah, sure.
Also, everyone, Future Twin is playing tonight. Come all the
that's
way
me,
from the Bay.
the Future Twin.
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing.
8:30
She's
downstairs.
Really
I think,
dynamic.
depending where we are in the bowels of this building. It's upstairs, actually. I'm wrong. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, so, you know, when I very first started working collaboratively, I felt like the studio was a little bit too isolating, and I just felt like I couldn't really understand what I was making if it wasn't relating to people, you know? And so I would go out in the world and then like, oh my God, the world is so difficult and it's exhausting, and you're having to like deal with like other people and their ideas, and you're like, oh my God, why are your ideas different than mine? What is wrong with you? And then you're like, wait, that idea is actually genius. I never would have thought of that. You're so much smarter than me. Thank you so much for giving that to me. Oh my God, you're the best. This is amazing. Oh, I hate you. I have to go back. I'm so tired. Like all of it, the whole world is just, you know, part of it. And so for me, there's definitely a like, it feels like there's a chemical reaction, or, you know, there's a kind of an alchemy that happens when you make contact with the world, but there's also kind of an alchemy that happens in the dark of your mind and in those like very nascent subconscious spaces, right? And so it feels to me like one really wouldn't want to exist without the other. And like saying I'm going to take a break next year is kind of like I want to work on an animated film. I just want to spend some time being a little spacey, a little lost, a little like internal, a little kind of, you know. And I think that I'm learning more about storytelling and about what it means to make culture, and just sort of, you know, a little more about who I am and wanting to like channel that into my next phase of work. But it's you know, when I collaborate, always my collaborators challenge me incredibly at the level of their brilliance. Like they bring their brilliance to me, and I really have to reckon with it, and it's very difficult. And it's so exhausting, but it's so rewarding because they, they just turn gears in you that aren't going to get turned. They have ideas related to the thing that you said that you never would have had, and vice versa. And so, there's something so special that happens with that. And that is true of, the projects that are represented upstairs, the folks that are here. And then like I'm a little bit of, I'm like, what is that, like introverted extrovert or whatever, like I love people but I also give a lot of energy when I'm in public spaces and I need to quiet. Yeah, so back to your question. So when I was 10, I took a painting class, and it was really life-changing for me. So the sort of background is that, like I was saying, I grew up in a family of addicts, but my everything got stable around 9, 10 years old. So it was a very special moment because I had all these things that I didn't have before, like, a routine, a mom that would like go, oh, hey, do you want to go to a painting class? Want to take me to a painting class, And I just blossomed with it. I was like, oh my God, this is great, And I went to this painting class, and it was, I now realize that I owe everything to Bob Ross. Yes. So the other day, my friend, I actually owe someone $1 million now because I made a bet, and I'm serious about it, so I hope my work starts selling for a lot soon so I can pay this back. He was like, Bob Ross is from Daytona. And I was like, I bet you $1 million he is not from Daytona. I was like, I would know that. And so we looked it up. Turns out he's from Daytona. And then I realized that the reason that I had these great painting classes, which were, the kind of, his style. So there were people that were kind of imitating his style in classes around town. And I went to one of these, and everybody was tons older than me. It was like basically people in their 70s and 80s. I walked in, I'm 10. And we were like, oh, sorry, like, am I in the wrong? And they were like, no, get in here, And they totally challenged me, and I would be like, oh, I can't do it, I'm 10. And they were like, nope, sorry, like, you're doing it, And they really just like held me to it and encouraged me, and they just like kind of adopted me. And I got so much affirmation from it. And as a kid that had grown up in this really unstable place, affirmation was just sunshine. I just drank it up. And so I think that I latched on to making art, and I was talented at it. So it was this thing where I was just like, this is it, I got this, I'm doing this, and I just went with it ever since. It was just like kind of the core of my being, and really starting at that age, at 4th grade. Like if I taught, I would teach 4th grade. I love 10-year-olds and 9-year-olds. It's such a special time. It's like, I find like, it's like you're kind of present. You're like, you still have the childlike wonder, but you're starting to be able to articulate yourself. So it's a really special time. Thanks for asking that.
So maybe we take one more question.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
Good. I was curious about some of your work is so place specific, and in your early beginnings, as you looked at spaces as places, what was it that attracted you, and what story, and how did you connect to the space itself? So I'd love to understand a little bit about your sites and how that connected or spoke to you.
Yeah. Well, at first, I lived in New York, and I would just see walls and just sort of be like, oh, like that's a cool wall. I'd ride by that every day. And so it was a little like just sort of instinctive, just reaching out to like a cool color, a cool texture, like a spot that just felt like, a little kind of like, you're not like pasting on someone's front door of their house, right? You're like, occasionally maybe an apartment building, but spaces that felt a little bit public, and that felt a little bit like just kind of open, and that maybe had some like beautiful colors and textures going on. And then, different cities, I started getting invited to different places, and the works generally, sometimes there's a work that's really in response to a specific place, but a lot of times it's, just a sort of a cast of characters that I have with me, and then I'll just kind of think about like, okay, this fits here for, maybe just because of the natural elements around it, or maybe because of the, this piece feels like it wants a kind of a catacomby space, or it wants like a really open space. It's kind of just pretty like intuitive, I would say. I think sometimes, yeah. Okay, I'll end on that half question. So thank you guys again. And yeah, I've had such an amazing time here. Thank you.
First